Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, bootlickers, shields, dust stars, peasants, vassals, accountants, lackeys, bootlickers. Oh, I'm a useful idiot, and I want to talk about Nancy Pelosi just recently said that Congress didn't have a spending problem. And in some ways I have to agree with her, because Congress doesn't have a spending problem as much as it has an arithmetic problem. And well, they have a spending problem too. But the heart of this is just bad arithmetic. And sometimes you have to wonder whether it's intentional or whether it's unintentional. Is it incompetence, or is it a part of some sinister agenda? And I've done other videos kind of on this topic, and that's the whole concept of cooked books. And my basic premise is that how can you address any of your real fiscal issues if all your numbers are faked and all your books are cooked? And for those of you who aren't familiar with the term cooking the books, I recommend my video for one thing. And but to put it simply, just fudging all your numbers in order to present a more profitable company, or to dodge taxes or other liabilities. So there's any number of reasons why people cook the books, but let's get back to Congress and how they sort of cook their books and why they're bad at arithmetic, and why we end up with the kind of fiscal headaches that we have. And let's get to the Budget and Economic Outlook by the Congressional Budget Office for 2013 to 2023, and that's for the next 10 years. And this will explain to you why we are fucked right from the beginning, right from the get-go, right from point A. Because the numbers that Congress is given by the Congressional Budget Office are the figures that our governments use to figure out how to set up their budgets, how much money they're going to need for different programs, whether it's endless wars, whether it's our entitlements programs, whether it's Border Patrol, whatever kind of appropriations. So anyway, if you start with numbers that are wrong from the beginning, how can you address the real problem? Always the bottom line here. So let's get to these numbers and let's see just how bad the Congressional Budget Office is. So first of all, they believe that government revenues will double in the next 10 years. So think about that. Government, revenues are going to double in the next 10 years. The only way government revenue is going to double in the next 10 years is through taxes. So that could be true. Who knows? But I don't know how they're going to get double the revenues they're going to get now. Who's going to come from? So is it going to come from the middle class? Are they going to double our taxes? How sustainable would that be? And then the Congressional Budget Office believes that the government revenue as a percentage of GDP will rise from 15% today to near 20% in 10 years. And that seems highly unlikely, again, just based on the same thing I just said about government revenue. Where is it going to come from? And then they believe that unemployment rate will continually fall over the next decade. And, well, that may be true in some ways, because the fact is unemployment level probably will drop. But that's because more and more people will drop off the rolls and will be permanently unemployed and create an underclass. And so the unemployment rate will go down to 5%, but that will be because we have 100 million unemployed people. So then we have the Congressional Budget Office believes that the federal budget deficit will fall to just 2.4% of GDP in just 2 years. Is there anyone who imagines that the federal budget deficit will fall to just 2.4% of GDP in the next 2 years? In fact, let's drive this home a little more. The Congressional Budget Office believes that the federal budget deficit will only be $430 billion in 2015, in 2 years. How are you going to fix the problems that we have? How are you going to address the fiscal problems that this country has, that the United States has, when you base your government budgets on an idea that the federal budget deficit is only going to be $430 billion in the next 2 years, you have to be kidding me. And the Congressional Budget Office also believes that we will not have a single recession over the next decade. And I tend to believe that because, frankly, I don't think we have been having recessions. I think we've been in a depression. And when push comes to shove, that will come to light at a later date. And then we have the Congressional Budget Office believes that inflation will stay at about 2% for the next decade. And that could be true, too, because the fact is, whatever they say it is what it is. Because if they don't like the number, then they just adjust the formula they use to come up with it so that it will stay at 2%. And in fact, they say it will stay at 2% for the next decade, and right now it's at about 10%. But they can say it's 2%, so that's what it is. So we see the flaws in this system of Congressional Budget Office numbers. Then they say that the Congressional Budget Office says that the U.S. GDP will grow by a total of near 70% in the next 10 years. GDP will grow by a total of 70%. Based on what? What's going to be the job engine? What's going to be the manufacturing driver? What will be the force in these next 10 years? And I'm open to suggestions. If anybody knows of what is going to be the main driver to revive the American economy, just put it in the comments below. And to give you an idea of how much faith we should put in the Congressional Budget Office numbers, and the fact that our entire congressional budget system is based on these kind of figures, is to look at the last report, the last Budget and Economic Outlook by the Congressional Budget Office for fiscal years 2003 to 2013. And they estimated that we would have a 10-year budget surplus of $5.6 trillion. A budget surplus of $5.6 trillion. And the reality is we had a deficit of $6.6 trillion. A 200% miss in the complete opposite direction. So that gives a very, very clear picture of just how bad congressional numbers are. So, and to give you another idea, look at that figure that the Congressional Budget Office believes that the federal budget deficit will be only $430 billion 2 years from now. Well, in the first 2 months of 2013, January and February, we already added another $360 billion to the federal budget deficit. So, for now anyway, I rest my case. How can you fucking fix anything in this country, especially the budget? How can we rely on any government accounting when we have expectations and numbers like these coming from the Congressional Budget Office itself? I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too.